Hello, and welcome to Returning to Us, a podcast that gives you strategies and tips for how to hack your brain, build and strengthen relationships, and to teach people how to recognize and neutralize their emotional states. I'll discuss emotional intelligence and regulation, how food and exercise impact the body and brain, and share lessons from my own lived experiences. I'm Lauren Spiegelmeier, the founder of the Behavior Hub, which is an organization that works to reduce the stressors of raising and educating children through a brain and biology-based lens. In these episodes, I'll share stories and strategies from my own life, work, and research, answer listener questions, and wrap it up with a try-it-at-home tip. Decades worth of information in just minutes. You ready? Hey all, today we are not doing a solo episode. As you can see, I brought in a good friend to do an interview with. So today's interview, and we are talking all about mood regulation, food and herbs, and how we can use those things to regulate moods. But I want to welcome our guest today, Justina. So Justina, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Lauren.
This is Justina Hertzler. She is an RN and an herbalist, and I cannot wait for her to share her genius with us. So I'm going to pass the mic to her and let her speak a little bit about what she does and what is her area of genius.
Okay, thanks, Lauren. This was actually the hardest one to think about when you kind of gave me the questions, because I do a lot of things. I guess the areas that I'm focused on right now. Well, I'm a mom, so I have a 7 and a 10-year-old. I am a home cook. I spend hours and hours of my day and I love doing it in the kitchen because we all have diet restrictions. I guess I don't like to call them restrictions, but diet alterations that are not, the standard American diet. So I spend a lot of time recreating recipes for our family that is gluten-free, dairy-free, and we tend to eat low FODMAP right now, and I can explain more about that. I love natural wine, and I'm always teaching myself about wine and learning to blind taste, and I'm an herbalist, so that's what I do for my job, even though I don't like to think of it as my job. I think when you ask like, what's your genius? I think my response was like, I'm an experience collector. I was like, I love to do so many things. I love to teach myself new things. I'm always like reading and researching and learning how to like self-heal or, help other people around me self-heal. So it was kind of this like passion for like collecting experiences that led me to a plant teacher in Tucson, Arizona. And I dove into this experience that was offered. I'd never really taken an herbalism course before, but I knew like it was a passion of mine. I'd always practiced it for myself and my family, even when I was working as a nurse. And I grew up eating wild edibles and surrounded by this garden with medicinal plants. I knew my mom was doing something with them, but I didn't pay much attention as a child. But anyways, I came out of this experience in the desert, having gone through this herbalism immersion weekend, totally transformed almost, and just so excited to have had that experience where I was shown, kind of guided to this relationship with plants and the plants medicine that I didn't know was a thing. We kind of know about traditional peoples and their use of plants and like a plant spirit medicine kind of way, but I didn't know that like modern humans were doing this. So it was life-changing. It really was a life-changing experience. And I dove into, I couldn't wait to do more of it. So I think a week later, I enrolled in an herbalism intensive apprenticeship in Ithaca. And so, and I've just been like a student of herbalism ever since.
It must be something about the spirituality of like food and herbs. I just had a phone call the other day with someone who, on a whim, wanted an experience, and she wanted to learn more about like holistic nutrition. So she had taken an extended course or something, and she's like, I fell in love. And she's like, when I loved it so much, I left my job in corporate America in New York City to pursue teaching people about like holistic nutrition. And I was like, no, I know someone else that had a similar experience. Like, I keep hearing that a lot of people that are getting into food, like holistic nutrition and herbalism, and it's like it starts as an experience, a curiosity, and it turns into like an obsession. Yeah.
Yeah. And I used it on myself, and I had been, I basically started with diet originally, like experimenting on myself constantly. Like years ago, I had learned that you could remineralize your teeth with diet change. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have cavities. I just gave birth and I have all these cavities. I'm going to remineralize my teeth. And I did it. And I was like, wow.
I think for me, what's so fascinating about your particular journey is that your background is in you're an RN. So it's more fascinating because we're so used to using pharmaceuticals and Western medicine to fix our problems, to band-aid our problems. And so you have this background. So when you are working with the herbs, like, oh, well, there are herbs that can do a lot of the same things that these pharmaceuticals are doing and are less harmful and have less potential effects than the pill-based form.
Yeah, that is an interesting point. And I do love having that background. I love having had that foot in Western medicine, because it helps when I'm working with clients. I think they feel comfortable because we're more comfortable sliding into the herbalism realm, knowing that I come from that background. I worked in Western medicine. I worked in the hospital, and I have, just had experience with the kind of issues or I would say displeasure about their experience in Western medicine, perhaps. That's often why they end up coming to me. But even when I was working as a nurse, I'd go home and make all my own medicines, and and I try to teach my patients about them.
That's amazing. Were they receptive?
I mean, they were curious and they were interested, but there's this power imbalance in Western medicine that I felt. It was very hard to, it's not that I wanted to overrule it or override it, but it was very hard to get through or even to break through that power imbalance.
Yeah. And this is me just speaking from experience, but even yesterday in a discussion with, I see an acupuncturist who, a lot of them have backgrounds in Chinese medicine, other areas. And we were talking a lot about fertility and birth control and all these things. And someone who I really connected with there works a lot with natural forms of birth control. And we were having this like moment where we're like, it's a little bit alarming that with Western medicine and the medical field, that we don't talk about not only the options that we have, but the possible effects. Like, I remember as a child, a very young child, getting on birth control, and I was initially just for like acne control. But no one even like talked about where's the acne probably coming from? Like, what else could you change besides getting on birth control? Or if you're going to get on birth control, like, here are the possible effects. And maybe we shouldn't have you on it all the time. It's just like, you're 11 years old and someone tells you to take a pill and you trust them. So they're a professional, you take the pill, and then 20 years later when you're on birth control and you're having problems conceiving or other health problems. And it's like, why didn't someone tell me what my other options were? Or why didn't someone tell me what the effects of being on birth control for 20 years are?
That is a long discussion. But yeah, that is, I feel like that's the crux of the issue, what kind of like pushed me towards, or why I was more drawn towards herbalism and therapies essentially that address the root cause. And I think that's one of the things that you had mentioned about pharmaceuticals and the difference between herbs and pharmaceuticals. And that's exactly why I use herbs, because a pharmaceutical has this very specific purpose. It's like a chemical that causes a specific physiologic reaction in the body. When you take it away, that, the effect disappears. But with herbs, I mean, they certainly can cause a physiological reaction in the body or force a physiological reaction in the body depending on the herb, but they generally tend to play a more supportive role, where they are nourishing a body system, they are relaxing it, or they're bringing vitality back to it, and in that way they are creating this response versus this like acute physiologic response, from a pharmaceutical.
Yeah. And I want to clarify, because I know there are going to be a lot of people listening, parents listening, and there are a lot of people that access pharmaceuticals and Western medicine, and that's not always a bad thing. My thought is always to be kind of open-minded and look at both sides and see the benefits of both sides. But then I always think, like, for me, I always want to get back to like my most natural form. I don't want to put a lot of artificial, and that's a personal preference. I don't want to put a lot of artificial things in my body. So even if I'm on a Western medicine, like my thought is, okay, well, if that's a temporary like support to get back to neutral, what's my plan for getting back to like natural neutral? And my, again, concern with Western medicine is like put you on it or put a child on it and they're on it forever, or they're not only on it forever, but a long time, or they're just keep increasing the dose. And for me, I always question is like, it's still unnatural. So what's the plan for getting someone off of the meds and teaching them or helping them in a more natural way? So again, I think that there's the right time and the right place for some of these things. I just encourage everyone to be kind of critical and ask more questions and get more information, so that you can make an educated decision.
I completely agree. There is absolutely a time and a place. We have this great Western medical system that does, an amazing job in an acute and emergency situation. So I totally agree with you. It's that second component of like, how do you then, once you use these pharmaceuticals to kind of like decompress or come back to like a sense of balance, like how do you then correct the underlying issue and go forward?
That makes sense. So I know with a lot of parents, educators, and people with kids on here listening, I want to talk a little bit about what are some things that parents can do for themselves or for their kids to help regulate mood in terms of food or herbs, or just any knowledge you have around that area that, not only what can they do, but maybe also where can they find it?
Okay. I love this question.
We'll be here for a while.
All day long, every day. This is what I love to do. Herbs, I'm going to talk about them second because they're so important. But the first place, I think, especially with children, to start is diet. Just really honestly, like looking at your diet. As a parent, I feel like you can't expect your child to eat healthier than you,
right,
or eat something special that you're not going to eat. So I feel like it's always, or can always be, a family affair, but looking at the diet with a very, very discerning eye as a parent. Children are little and their bodies are little and they don't process things the same way that adults do. So additives in food, sugar content, artificial flavors, colors, all those things, affect children's bodies different than they do adults, simply because they don't metabolize and process and detox the same way that we do. So, eating a whole foods diet with, as little sugar and as little processed food as possible, always a good start, but I love to work with parents and clients around the elimination diet, really, really digging in and really getting to the root of, whether it's mood or skin issues, acne, a lot of these things come from like deep internal imbalances, in the liver or the gut.
Yeah, I can, if you don't mind interrupting here,
Yeah.
like vouch, we had talked about that. It's like someone who had acne as a child and as an adult, like a little bit of breakout here and there, but still like curious, like where's this coming from? Because it is an unnatural thing to happen on your face. So we had talked about cutting out dairy and trying to, gluten and sugar and then even coffee. And I noticed that it's a lot to cut out, but not only has my face cleared up, my mood is better, I have more energy, I'm sleeping better. And I'm like, there are certain days when I will give in to those things. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to feel so good on this. It's going to, but I want to have it. But most days I stick to that somewhat rigid plan, and it's worth it because of what I get on the other side of it.
Right. Getting to that point is the struggle, but there's always challenge in life. There's always something that we need to learn and grow and kind of like get beyond, but getting there is amazing, and you feel like so amazing, and you almost forget, once you've been there so long, you almost forget how bad you used to feel.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've done it myself. I went through this process too, and I've gone through it many times through many different diets for many different reasons, treating small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, remineralizing cavities, doing elimination diet to identify my undiagnosed food allergies.
So people are probably going to want to know, like, there are two things that came up so far. I'm like, I know people are going to want to know what these are. They're going to want to know elimination diet, what is it? And low FODMAP, what is it?
Yeah. Okay. So the elimination diet it's an amazing and really sensitive diagnostic tool that anybody can use. It's a way of like taking responsibility and taking control of your own health. You don't need somebody to tell you what you're allergic to or how to do it and how to what to eat. So it is basically a 6-week or more plan where you are going to eliminate the top allergens. So you're going to cut out dairy, gluten, eggs, shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, and corn. I think I hit them all. You can go beyond that. Some people cut out.
Like, what would you eat during the elimination diet?
Well, there's so many things.
You're like, I have to cut all those things out. There's nothing left to eat.
So you want to cut them out for at least 4 to 6 weeks, and that gives your body a chance to heal almost, because you are not when the body isn't being exposed to potential allergens. It can actually do the work of self-healing, which our bodies are amazingly naturally designed to do. But in a chronic inflammatory state, which happens, if you have a food allergy or you're eating something that you might be sensitive to, your body is constantly inflamed. Basically, it's constantly being the inflammatory response is constantly being triggered. So it does not have almost like the time or energy to do the healing work. So you cut that out, you allow your body to heal, you allow some of the, like your digestive system cells to kind of regrow, and then you reintroduce each of those foods slowly. You only introduce one at a time, and you evaluate your symptoms. So, you add in, one of the first things would be maybe, it depends on how sensitive you get. Like if you cut out citrus and all those things, you usually add those ones back in first. But you pick one to add in first, and you only add that one food, and you eat a lot of it for 3 days, and you really monitor your symptoms. And I usually actually have clients fill out a whole body system evaluation before they do it, so that they can compare how they felt before to whether there are improvements. So basically you do that until you add in all the foods. And if one of them causes a reaction, you cut it out and you let your symptoms subside, and then you can add the next one in.
Yeah. So helpful to probably track this somewhere for you and your child or your family, like a journal or something, just to note like how everyone's feeling, a little check-in, maybe at dinner or something. And I would say the second thing is like, I'm thinking people are going to wonder like, well, what would be a symptom of like having a food intolerance, or how would you know it's not settling well with you?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we often think like food intolerance, oh, it must be gut related, but and cognitive imbalances are also gut related. So irritability, moodiness, insomnia or sleeplessness, difficulty focusing, hyperactivity. Those may be some of the, cognitive disturbances from food allergies. And then, there's a whole range of gut issues, from just, gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, nausea, lack of appetite, not feeling satisfied. I used to have a friend who had no symptoms at all, but she would break bones all the time. Like, she was constantly breaking a bone, and finally was diagnosed with celiac disease, but had no gut issues. So that's why the elimination diet is so useful, because your symptoms will usually, like, if you eat something, if you reintroduce something that causes a reaction, it's often more obvious what if it's not a gut thing.
Yeah.
Oh, and then like skin, obviously acne, eczema, those tend to be also food allergy symptoms.
I can share, like, even I love coffee, and it doesn't even have to be caffeinated coffee. I just love the taste of coffee. But having not been on it so much, having switched to tea and been on more tea, when I do have coffee, I can tell right away I get like an upset stomach. It almost like feels like I can feel the acidity in my body. It's like my body's like burning from all the acidity of the coffee, which for years I never had an issue with. It's not that I didn't have an issue with it. It's just I wasn't attuned to my body. I wasn't paying attention to how my body felt. And then my body got kind of like regulated to it. People could say, well, if you're like regulated to it, then you're fine. I'm like, not necessarily, because like you can't necessarily see what's going on in there, and you may feel okay, but there could be things wearing and tearing, or signs that are your body is trying to show you that something's not right, but we're just not attuned to it. Maybe you're like the dentist tells you, oh, your gums are receding. Like, well, then you should probably pay attention to that. And that's a sign from our body of like something's not right.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, symptoms, we throw this term around like symptom, this is a symptom, but symptoms are actually our body's language. They're our body's way of telling us that something isn't right. It's out of balance. Pain is like a big one. It's like, hey, stop doing that. There's something wrong.
Yep. So that's kind of the elimination diet. I would say, I will let everyone know. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you would ask like, what can you eat? And I was just going to give you a, there's a lot of, it's hard to go into all of the things that you can eat, but there's a great website that I love. It's nourishingmeals.com.
That's a good one.
And they, it's their husband and wife team, and they actually have a couple books on the elimination. They have a book on the elimination diet. Most of their recipes are geared towards different phases of the elimination diet, and they're phenomenal. She's a chef, so they're just delicious.
And I would say too, like, we'll be honest, it's not easy. It's not like, yeah, this is easy. We just don't eat these things for 6 weeks, and then we slowly add things back in. It was fun. It was great. Like, kids loved it. Like, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. It's not easy. It's challenging, but with all challenging things, like the reward on the other side is so worth it. So I would encourage you to at least dabble in it, try and learn more, maybe try it, maybe go full blown if you can commit to it, but let the motivation be that the rest of your life is in an upward trajectory in terms of health because of these little steps you're taking now, and especially for your kids as well.
Absolutely. Love that.
I know sometimes it's hard to find motivation, and like kids have very picky diets, but for those picky eaters, this might be great because you kind of eat the same or similar things for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. You had asked, that was one of the first things you said. And so getting your kids involved, I have 2 kids and so I love to let them pick out their own recipes, like we get fun cookbooks. They pick them out. Actually, they're the ones that found this Thrive magazine that we love. We were saying online, a particular natural food store. And my daughter saw this magazine. She's like, can we get this, mommy? Can we get this? And I was like checking out, and I was like, oh, I don't know. Maybe next time. And then I looked at it and I was like, whoa, that food is gorgeous. Like, no wonder my daughter wants to like, yeah. And so then I just like flipped through the recipes, and I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, we'll get this, but you have to make every recipe in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, when they pick out the food that they want to eat, and when they participate in making it, and when when they're engaged with it, and they're putting some skin in the game, they are way more receptive to trying new things.
Yeah. It's that
control.
They have some sense of control, belonging, a part of. Yeah. There's buy-in. Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the tactics that we use. But I also love it. It's not really a tactic. It's just that we all love being in the kitchens.
Yeah, that's true too. And relationship building. And I would say too, like from my work being more like brain neuroscience, and we integrate a lot of food things because food impacts your brain growth and development, cell growth. But I will encourage families to tell and break it down, like break the science down for kids. Like, why are we doing this? What is it doing to your body or gut? Or, share with them. They're not even, I'm telling 3-year-olds about how their emotional brain works, like the parts of the emotional brain. I break it down and make it really, really simple, but they're fascinated by it. So even telling them why we're doing this, giving them the science is going to be motivating for them as well.
I love it. That reminds me of a funny story. I just want to tell you really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
A couple, like 2 years ago, whenever Halloween, we were out in Tucson, and we were staying with my mom, and a neighbor of hers really wanted to bring my girls some Halloween candy. And, I'm not going to say no to this like very nice gentleman who wanted to bring them Halloween candy. So they each picked out a bag of regular M&Ms, like those little mini M&Ms. And they wanted to know if they could eat it. So I said, sure, it's fine. And then later I said, so how did they taste? And my oldest daughter was like, it tasted like high fructose corn syrup and artificial food coloring. So I was like, oh, they are listening.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so amazing and funny.
Yeah. That just goes along with that point you were making. Like, yeah, teach your kids, like, they're totally receptive.
Yeah, I think so too. They're curious like we are.
And start now. Don't have to relearn it when you're an adult. It's hard when you're an adult.
It is harder. I would agree.
To change your behavior.
It's more flexible than we are sometimes.
Yeah.
And we don't need to go into this in a lot of detail, but I know people are probably like, what is that? And we can put more links in the show notes for what exactly it is, but the low FODMAP, like, so like not something else we're asking you to adopt as well, but just, I think you all would be maybe curious just to hear what it is.
Yeah. So the low FODMAP diet was developed by researchers in Australia at Monash University. And it was a diet that was developed to address IBS symptoms because it's one of the most commonly diagnosed gut. I think it's actually a diagnosis now, but and there are very few pharmaceuticals that are effective for the symptoms of IBS, which stands for irritable bowel syndrome. So the low FODMAP diet was created to address the symptoms without using pharmaceuticals, and it's been shown to be 80% effective at treating symptoms of IBS. So it stands for low fermentable oligopolymonosaccharides, which are
everyone remember that one.
Basically, they're carbohydrates that are in foods. And so it's a type of elimination diet. So it's specifically about reducing or cutting out foods that are high in fermentable oligopolymonosaccharides.
This is because, like with IBS, which is an inflammatory disorder, you're trying to cut out the foods that are inflaming the internal.
Right. And what happens is usually IBS is caused by, it's not, it's a symptom of a greater imbalance. Our body is there's something going on. There's some kind of inflammatory digestive issue that is causing these symptoms. So oftentimes it can be actually an overgrowth of bacteria, and the bacteria will then actually eat these carbohydrates and ferment them and cause a lot of the symptoms of the gas, the bloating, sometimes it's alternating between diarrhea and constipation and nausea. So it's really effective. I actually did it for about 6 months. I had food poisoning last year and never had gut issues in my life. And just developed, classic IBS symptoms. I did a lot of research and diagnosed myself with small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And one of the treatments was the low FODMAP diet. So adopted that, created an herbal antibiotic regimen for myself, and it worked.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
So I guess before we go on to the next question and kind of slowly work our way to the end, because I don't want to overwhelm anyone with too much information, we probably should do another episode. There's so much to talk about, but so we're talking a lot about kind of like taking out the unnatural things, and that also lends itself into a lot of farming, because we have so many people in the United States and in the world. We tend to use some artificial things to make things grow because we don't want to lose those crops because we need to feed everyone. But if someone did want to try to eat things that had less or no hormones, chemicals, pesticides, because those would be unnatural things to the body and could cause inflammation, where would be the best place to find some of those things?
Farmers markets, your local natural food store, even bigger, organic grocery stores where, you can find, grow them yourself. That's what we love to do. And my children's school, they have a school garden where the kids learn to grow the plants and identify the vegetables and taste them. And, they really get involved. But yeah, farmers markets are a great way. And they're pretty easy to find, especially in a big city.
Yeah, I was any cities would have, I'm sure, some type of farmers market, and if they wouldn't, they definitely would probably have some type of organic store somewhere nearby, or natural food store. And if you live in the country, then you probably have access to farms.
Right.
If you don't, and you live in the country, you probably have less to do, so you maybe could grow some of your own. And there are so many amazing resources for growing your own foods. I mean, Instagram, YouTube, books, like unlimited resources right now for growing your own. And I would say, even as someone who lives in a city, Baltimore City, there are farmers on the outskirts of the city, but what I am a part of is CSA, so community supported agriculture, from an organic farm that brings the food into the city. You sign up for a season every other week or every week, depending on how much food you want. You go to the pickup spot and you pick up your produce, and then I have fresh produce to last me usually about 2 weeks before I go pick up the next round. So you can also Google that. Any of these things could be Googled. You can find what's closest to you.
Yeah, CSAs are awesome. They're great. And they really support the farmer, because the farmer actually gets paid in the beginning of the season for the upcoming harvest, instead of having to wait until they sell all of their food throughout the harvest season. And that is often not until late summer or the fall. So yeah, they're really great for farmers too. Environmental Working Group produces every year a list of the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. So that's also just a great resource, when you're shopping and you're like, hey, should I buy this conventional or should I buy this organic? If you're going to make that decision, it's just a great resource to know which foods are the worst offenders as far as like toxins, sprays, pesticides, things like that.
I remember the first time I discovered that list, I saw it somewhere and I was like, oh no, like American strawberries have like
strawberries, grapes.
I think they had we found residue from 57 different pesticides and chemicals on these strawberry skins. And I was like, oh God. Okay. So maybe I won't go fully organic, but I'm at least going to buy organic strawberries. So that way I know the worst. I'm not supposed to say that strawberries are the top of the list every year. They might be. But just being aware of it helps you to make better decisions. And it doesn't always have to be super, super expensive. Buying organic is more expensive, sure. But think about then the benefit of that is if you're putting things in your body that cause less inflammation, cause less kind of health issues, you might spend less money on medicine or reactive things or doctors, or because you're keeping your body more, plus longevity of health. You are what you eat.
Yep.
So I know it's tough, but try and find the motivation in the long term, in the health, and that there's some good stuff there.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know, and I'm sure everyone's curious to know, like with your kids, with your lifestyle, like what are some things that you do food or herb wise that are like maybe daily practices or some things that are really good to have on hand?
Yeah. Well, every day is like fun new day for herbs. What are we going to have today? I mean, I start every day with my like herb ritual, making a tea with herbs. Sometimes I stick with one blend for a while. So I've just been feeling like I need to nourish my nervous system and replenish my nervous system. So I created a tea blend, which is also great for kids, but maybe I'll give a recipe that's a little more tailored to kids. But it's nettle, tulsi, milky oats, and lemon balm. And so they all play this role of like deeply nourishing the nervous system in order to revitalize it. And so I've been drinking that tea every morning. I use herbs throughout the day, usually either in tea or tincture form, just for longevity. If I'm not treating something like specific at the time, those tend to be herbs like reishi and astragalus that are these like longevity adaptogenic herbs. I love digestive bitters. The traditional Western American diet is lacking in bitter foods. We basically cut it out because they don't taste that great,
100%.
Or we have become unaccustomed to the bitter flavors, but they play such an important role in digestion. I would say that that's probably a significant part of like our collective digestive issues, is that we don't incorporate bitter foods into our diet. I mean, like usually it's bitter greens or bitter herbs, like that you might, like culinary herbs that you might be eating. But so I use a lot of digestive bitters, and then my diet is always gluten-free and dairy-free and low FODMAP, depending on the state that my family's in.
So if someone wanted to buy some of these herbs, to whether in tincture form or in tea form, or they wanted to make that tea, where on earth would they get them?
Yeah, there is there's a great local herbal company. So I'm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I love to buy locally from all of my local herbalists and farmers. And there's actually a company called Natural Hope Herbals. I've been to their farm. They're farm to bottle herbal medicine. They grow it all there on their gorgeous, like secluded farm up in the mountains in Pennsylvania. And they grow it all. They make their own medicine there. They bottle it. And they're just really potent formulas. So I use a lot of theirs if I don't make my own.
You can order directly from them?
You can order directly from them online.
We'll link that in the show notes.
Yeah. Mountain Rose Herbs or Star West Botanicals are a great resource for dried herbs, but there is a regional one that I had to look up again because I haven't bought from them in a while. Oh, Healing Spirits Herb Farm. They're up in New York, like in upstate New York. So they wildcraft and grow organically. So they're another great source of just dried herbs if you're looking for dried herbs to make teas.
Yeah, I think that's maybe an easy way, like especially if you're using some things like I will use licorice root to like sweeten some things. So like for kids who tend to like sweeter things, like maybe adding some of those things that will sweeten a tea. And I know like kids, like when you have the loose herbs and you have you can buy the tea packets where they can put the herbs in the packets. They are fascinated by like the creation of like, we're creating our own teas. Like we're putting all these herbs in this little packet, putting the packet in a tea and warming up like the mindfulness and the intentionality behind that. Like they're absolutely fascinated by it because there's like this creativity and like alchemist like approach.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes. I have, well, you've seen my kitchen. There's like an herb wall, jars everywhere. And so, yeah, my kids love to mix their own teas and, pull jars off the shelf. And
I feel like we should like snap a photo of your kitchen for everyone to see. You're all going to see this kitchen. It's amazing. I went there and I'm always like, whoa, what's new in here today?
So yeah, I mean, that's another way of doing it. Just let them have the herbs available and let them mix them up. And yeah, you can get your own tea bags, or you can get those like these things, this is what I use.
Yep.
The metal strainers.
Yep.
Yeah.
And tinctures, for those of you who might not be familiar with the term tincture, is just, I'll let Justina go ahead and share.
Yeah. So I set out some jars because this is another brand that I use a lot of. It's Urban Moonshine. They are up in Vermont, I believe.
And they are not alcoholic, even though it says moonshine.
They are not. Well, tinctures are traditionally made with some form of alcohol.
Well, that's true.
Yes. So, way back then, they were infusing wine with herbs, or vinegar, with herbs. And so the wine, the alcohol, the vinegar, glycerin we use now, that's actually the component that extracts herbal constituents out of the herb. So it's an important part of the medicine making process. But you're getting a very, very small amount of alcohol when you take a tincture. For children, it's drops. If you're using a tincture for children. And Lauren, you can link the children's herbal dosage guide that I sent you. Yeah. Because it's
this is not going to get your kids drunk.
No, definitely not. No, my kids take tinctures all the time. And actually, Natural Hope Herbals has a children's line that is mostly glycerin based. So it's a mostly glycerin based extract versus an alcohol. Glycerin is a little bit less effective than alcohol. So they kind of do a combination. They make a glycol, is what they call it.
Okay. That's awesome.
So yeah, it's just this ancient technique of extracting herb constituents into an alcohol or liquid. It's different than an infusion where you use water to extract, which is basically a tea. But
yeah, I'm sure there'll be lots of questions, and we'll talk about this at the end of the show where you can go with your questions. But I know you gave us a few recommendations right there. Any other recommendations for kids, for families, for moods, for people that are overly stressed and overwhelmed in this chaotic world right now?
Well, can I give you my tea recipe?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
We'll use that as our try it at home tip. Try it at home tip coming your way right now.
Okay, so try it at home tip. So catnip, which we know makes cats like really excitable. It actually does the opposite in humans. And catnip is one of these plants that just has this great affinity for children.
We're not talking about catnip like from the pet store. This is the plant.
Right. I mean, it's probably the same thing, but I would get it from a different source, organic. I would definitely recommend getting organic herbs. But yeah, it's the same plant that makes cats really excited. It's a very soothing remedy for children. It actually helps with hyperactivity and irritability. And it's a great digestive support. That's one of its main actions, is on the digestive system. So it really works on both it works on the gut-brain axis really well. Same with chamomile. So the first herb that I recommend is catnip. And then chamomile is another plant that just loves children. And children tend to love it. It has a really sweet, aromatic scent. It tastes great. Another plant that works on the gut-brain axis. It's very it has an antispasmodic property that works on the nervous system and the gut at the same time. And often when you soothe the nervous system, you will calm the gut at the same time, or vice versa. If you can calm the gut, you will in effect be calming the nervous system. So those two herbs, and then an herb that I put in almost every nervous system support formula is milky oats, Avena sativa, and we can put the botanical names if we need to of these plants in the link. But this plant, it's oat. It's the oat plant, like we get oatmeal from, but you're harvesting the seed heads at the milky stage is why they're called milky oats. But you can actually, the stalks and the leaves are equally nourishing. And it's just this super nutritive plant that helps rebuild and replenish the nervous system through its high mineral content. It doesn't have this like direct acute effect on the nervous system like the two I just mentioned. It has this more like restorative effect where this plant is really indicated for the like really like burned out, like tired, like chronically exhausted, can't get out of bed, don't feel well, depressed almost. This plant is just so nourishing and so indicated for that kind of, and it works over time. So this is a plant you want to take daily. And then the last one is lemon balm, which is again another like really aromatic. It smells great. It smells lemony. It's in the mint family. It has a direct effect on the nervous system. Again, it's relaxing. It helps ease anxiety, especially like a nervousness and like tension and anxiety. It helps relax and promote the release of tension throughout the whole body. And none of these herbs, while they like have this direct effect on the nervous system, will make you drowsy. So that's the great thing about them. Lemon balm actually has this like uplifting effect. So it's like relaxing and uplifting at the same time. And it also has a digestive component. So again, works also on helping to relax smooth muscles and relax the digestive system. And put them all together and it tastes really great. And it's a really great formula for children. You could add a little bit of licorice to it to sweeten it, or make it into an iced tea.
That is licorice root, you all, not
the
candy form licorice. We don't want all that red dye and sugar.
Don't start with a Twizzler.
But yeah, get some of those. You can put them in a little tea bag, or you can put them in one of those little strainers, mesh strainers, or there are all kinds of ways to make this. But you think Justina, tea is probably the easiest way to have kids
tea is a really fun and soothing like remedy in its own way, like just the art of like making tea and holding your hot mug and smelling it and sipping it, you get the benefit of the aromatherapy because these plants, they all have these volatile oils, and so you're breathing it in, you're taking that warm, like soothing, nourishing liquid. And so I love that way. But tinctures are great, if you're short on time in the morning and you really just want to take this herb before you go out the door or get ready for school. Tinctures are great. They're concentrated, they're quick. You just put a couple drops, depending on the child's age or weight, in a little bit of water or tea, and you just drink it, and then there you go. So yeah, I love both, and we use both all the time. So
good to know. And if you all have questions, I'm going to link Justina's information and talk to your local herbalist, and lots of resources out there. But that's a lot of information. Anything that we did not get to that you wanted to bring up or talk about today?
I feel like there probably are so many things, Lauren.
I know. We may in the future need to do another episode.
I remember even all the things that I had like thought of that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, anything we didn't get to, and also we can plan another episode, because I feel like there is so much more to uncover.
One thing we didn't talk about is, as movement. We talked about diet,
like
movement and mindfulness as just another way of addressing mood. I know when I work with clients, it's never one approach. It's this multi-layered approach to addressing all of these, whatever it is. So this constant awareness of like what response your emotions are creating in the body. You might feel something in your stomach and you're like, oh, what is that feeling? I don't feel well. Oh, I'm anxious.
Yeah.
It's anxiety. And when you have this awareness, it's a lot easier to kind of release it.
Yeah, so, which you can do through movement. Yeah, move the energy, let your energy like push that out, and that way you're not kind of holding it in your body and letting it kind of eat away at you internally.
Yeah, it's basically like a mental exercise.
Yep.
It's a constant cognitive exercise of just like returning to the awareness of like what's going on in the body. And
100%. I know, and I don't know if you're accepting clients right now, but sometimes when she has the availability, she will do consult sessions virtually over the phone or, however she does them. But I will let her share with you all her take on that and where you can find her and how you can contact her if you want more information.
Yeah. So as I said to Lauren in my email response, like this is my passion and my purpose. And I love working with people. And I do see clients, in my, it's not spare time, but I make time because I love it so much. So the best way to get a hold of me is just by email, which you can link, and I would be happy to respond. I mean, you're welcome to find me on Instagram, but I don't do a whole lot on there, but I am there. I'm on Instagram. But yeah, or call me. I love it's much easier sometimes to connect by phone. Because there's so many questions when a person contacts me, I have so many questions, I want to know everything. I want to know all about where is everything coming from. And so sometimes it's hard to get all that information by email. So
we're going to link Justina's phone number. We're going to link Justina's email. We're going to link Justina's Instagram account. So whatever way you all feel most comfortable, you can contact her and see what availability is like and try and learn more, or at least, get some resources for how to improve this area. And again, no one's asking you to certainly do anything or adopt any of this, just giving information for you to do as you please. And even if you just decide to make tiny little micro changes, those are sustainable. So it's working toward getting better, not being perfect. For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for today's episode of Returning to Us podcast. And don't forget to try our try it at home tip, which is, what are we calling this tea?
I was calling it calm mood tea.
Calm mood tea. And calm mood tea, again, tell us the herbs that are in calm mood tea.
So you catnip, chamomile, milk oats, and lemon balm.
Lemon balm, and like a teaspoon of each herb.
Yeah, like equal ratio for each one. So maybe a teaspoon of each.
Okay. Yep. Noted. Don't forget that calm mood tea. And if you would like me to answer any of your questions, even if they're around herbs, we can consult Justina on a future show. Email me at podcast@thebehaviorhub.com, or you can send a text to 717-693-7744 and take what you learned today and apply it right away. Do some research, contact an herbalist, schedule an appointment with Justina. That way you can store it and remember it. You can also leave a comment or review with any thoughts or takeaways you had from the episode, because that will help you to store it in your memory. And stay tuned for future episodes to learn more ways about hacking your brain and your biology. And until next episode, I am Lauren Spiegelmeier, and thanks for joining Justina and me. And thank you, Justina, for sharing all of your amazing knowledge with us.
Absolutely. It was so fun. Thank you, Lauren.